Good morning, boys and girls. I know you can't see me, but you certainly can hear me. And today we're going to continue our lesson with organizing our notes so that we can begin to work towards drafting our piece. So you have already organized your notes 1 through 12, or your note cards. And we're going to move from there to grouping note cards based on things that they have in common. So I'm going to read to you some of my note cards in order and model for you what my thinking is. So this first note card says, Whitney left his home in the state of Massachusetts to become a tutor in Georgia. This one says, the one type that grew away from the shore had seeds in it that were hard to pick out of the cotton. This one says, Whitney learned a lesson. He learned that farmers were looking to make more money by growing cotton. This one says, Whitney originally wanted to study law, but put those plans aside in order to make and patent the cotton gin. He worked through the winter and spring manufacturing his new toy. He did this in a secret workshop offered by Catherine Green. What I notice with these note cards is that my first three, the one where he left Massachusetts to come to Georgia, the one that talked about just what kind of cotton grew near the shore, the one that talked about that he learned a lesson, that he observed that the farmers were wanting to make more money. Those three were before the fourth card that says he started to work on the cotton gin. So I'm thinking that the first three were prior to making the cotton gin, kind of like his inspiration. So those are what my first paragraph of my body are going to be about, is his inspiration. And so what I wanted to do was come up with a color to represent your ready, let's go. And obviously, you know, with a street light, go is the color green. So I'm going to use a green marker, and I'm just going to take that marker and put a dot in the top right corner of the first three note cards. All of those will be the same note cards that I used for the first body of my paragraph, or the first paragraph of my body, I should say. So I'm going to move those aside, and I'm going to look at the next ones. So this one right here, we've already said, it's he worked through the winter in a secret workshop. The next one says, Whitney decided to build the cotton gin after Catherine Green and her plantation manager, Phineas Miller, explained the difficulty of removing seeds from staple cotton. The next one says, it took a few months to make the gin, which was modeled after a larger version driven by a horse and water. The next one says the cotton gin stands for engine and works like a strainer that had a series of hooks that pulled cotton through with ease. The seeds stayed behind as they were too fine to pass through a piece of mesh on the gin. Additionally, the next one says the cotton gin was shaped like a wooden cylinder surrounded by comb-like spikes that pulled 50 pounds of lint through each day. What I'm seeing with those, all of those have in common is that they're all about the cotton gin and building the cotton gin and what the cotton gin looks like. When I move on to the next one, then it starts to say he's famous for that invention. In fact, after that it talks about how this invention increased the slave population to 4 million. Continues on with that he wanted to make a fortune. So I'm seeing a disconnect here. I'm seeing, you know, my note cards 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 about the actual cotton gin and making it. So that's going to be the middle of my body. It's going to be the second paragraph of my body. So I'm going to take a black marker to represent the middle, and I'm going to put a dot on each of my note cards that go together, all based around the actual invention and making the cotton gin. I'll take those, put them together, and put them to the side. Finally, I have 4 remaining. I have Whitney is famous for the invention of the cotton gin. So he became famous after he built it. I have, to sum this long one up, I have that from then until the Civil War, the slave population increased. Once again, it's all based on Whitney. Whitney, and where he got the key idea of the cotton gin. Then I have Whitney wanted to make a fortune by this invention. He thought this new machine would do more work than 50 men. And then the last one I have is that he could not have foreseen the ways in which his invention would have changed society for the worst. So these things were all like reflections afterwards, or what happened after the gin was complete. So, you know, when you're coming to the end or to the close, when you come to, you know, the intersection and you have to begin stopping, the color that you use would be red. So we're going to put red on the remaining note cards. So now I've given a color to all 12 note cards. I'm going to take that information and I'm going to use it to now complete, you remember this organizer. So my question was, how did Eli Whitney develop the cotton gin? We're going to focus on number 2, number 3, and number 4, because these are the 3 paragraphs of the body. So number 2, what is that? What are those note cards about? Well, if you remember, number 2 should really represent your green note cards. That was, and for most of you, that might be someone's early life. That might be something, you know, before they became famous that led up to their fame. The third one is going to be your black note cards. And the fourth one is going to be your red note cards. So I'm looking at my green ones again. And if you remember, this was he left his home in the state of Massachusetts. He learned a lesson that what farmers were looking for, and he learned something about the seeds and where they grew. All of these things led up until he decided to make the cotton gin. So I'm going to just call this Eli Whitney's inspiration. And if you need to be more specific, you can say something like, use the word before. And I'm using the word before cotton gin. The next ones, which were black, if you remember, this is once he started to make the cotton gin. So he worked through the winter. He worked through the winter based on what he knew about the seeds from short staple cotton were hard to remove. He made a model that was a version based on a larger version driven by a horse and water. He even told us what cotton gin stood for and what it looked like. Here's another one for what it looked like. So all of this is about him actually building the cotton gin. So I'm going to write that. Eli Whitney builds the cotton gin. Finally, I'm going to look at my last note cards. If you remember, they're red ones. And there were only 2 here, but I have, actually there's 3. Whitney is famous for the invention of the cotton gin. Actually, there's 4. So he was famous for the invention of the cotton gin. It impacted the slave population. It talks a little bit more about the impact that it had on slavery here. And then it also talks about that he wanted to make a fortune. All of these were after the cotton gin was made, almost like the impact of the cotton gin. So I'm going to write that, wrong box, I'm going to write it here in the red box, impact of the cotton gin. You're not going to do anything with box 5 right now. Leave that one alone. You're also not going to do anything down here with the hook. because hook represents your introduction and box 5 will represent your conclusion. So essentially, when we finish this piece, you will have 5 paragraphs. An introduction, 3 paragraphs in the body, and a conclusion. So what you're doing is, the first paragraph of my body is going to be just this. It's going to be about this. I'm going to use my note cards to draft. The second paragraph of my body is going to be about this. And I'm going to use my note cards to draft. And then the third paragraph of my body is going to be about this. And I'm going to use my note cards to draft. We're not there yet. So let me reiterate your steps today. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure your note cards are in order. You're going to take the colors green, black, and red. And you're going to read through your note cards and figure out the note cards that go together. Like if you have stuff that happens at the beginning of your notes that all have something similar, it might be the first 3, 4, 5 note cards. They all should begin with the green. You have to determine how many of those note cards are going to get the green, because you determine when the events change in your notes. Additionally, then you'll move on and you'll do black. Then you'll do red. Once you finish doing your colors, then you'll move over and show on your organizer what those colors represent. Your teachers will make sure that you're working hard today. You're going to have probably about 15 minutes to work on this. And if we don't get finished today, we will continue on Monday. Thank you, boys and girls, for understanding that I can't be there today. And I hope that you're working hard. Have a great day.